Let's look at a little background information on problem 16 before we try tackling putting it into GSP, which is ultimately what our next project is going to be. 16 asks us to use slope properties to show that AB is perpendicular to BC, CD perpendicular to DA, and BC parallel to DA. Now, the problem prefaces all this with use slope properties. Well, what are slope properties? Let's list them. One of the properties we have talked about over and over again about slope is the slope of perpendicular lines. What do we know about slopes of lines that are perpendicular to each other? Well, if we have to show AB being perpendicular to BC, let's see what happens when we find their slopes. I've listed the points of A, B, C, and D off to the left, and I've also placed them on the figure. Now let's find the slope. Our slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So our slope of AB is going to be 4 minus 1 all over negative 3 minus a negative 4 will give me negative 3 plus 4, which will give me a slope of 3 over 1, which also equals 3. Now let us look at BC's slope. BC has a slope of negative 1/3. So what do we notice about the two slopes? They are opposite reciprocals of each other. So the slope property that we are citing or using to show AB being perpendicular to BC is the property that says slopes of lines that are perpendicular to each other are opposite reciprocals of each other. Now, similar reasoning can also be used to show the comparison of two parallel lines, only their slopes will not be opposite reciprocals, and that is for you to decide what they should be. Now the question's ultimate answer is triangle ABC is congruent to what other triangle and why? Again, the homework for tonight is going to be to use GSP to answer these questions. You need to recreate the picture using the points as follows. You need to make sure you show the slope formula and find all the slopes of the segments in question. Your picture should include congruent symbols, which may not be that easy to show on GSP, but please be creative. Your answers or the work that you are showing should answer the following questions. What are the slope properties, characteristics that show us two lines are parallel or perpendicular? In the problem, how are those properties useful? And are the two triangles congruent? How do you know? What congruence shortcut are you citing? Now, when I say shortcut, I mean SSS, SAS, ASA, or AAS. Now, when you place your congruent symbols on your picture, and you find out what objects are congruent to what in your picture, you're going to be able to back it up with congruent statements. Now, the whole point to finding the slopes of AB, BC, CD, and DA are to lead us to finding angles or sides congruent in the picture. You'll be able to ask questions tomorrow, so come armed with them. Do not come to class tomorrow and say, I don't get any of this. You will have to have at least some point from which to ask me a question from. A blank screen is not a reason to ask a question. That means we need to come in after school and ask how to start. See you tomorrow.